Hello and welcome back. Now I have a big tower PC lying here, but it's not a PC. This is actually an Amiga A2000 that was gifted to me, which has been converted into a tower PC. And I'm not sure if I want to leave it like that, if I'm going to buy a case, or I don't know what I'm going to do with it now. But what I need to do is I need to take it apart because it really needs some maintenance. The battery down here is leaking, so I have to get to it. But this thing is so crammed full of hardware, and the whole physical setup is so strange that I'm going to have to try to work my way from the top to the bottom just to get everything out, and then just find out how to get to the main board, because this conversion has been done with a lot of attention to detail. So there's parts of the original case that is still part of the new tower, and some of the trays are still in here. So I'm gonna have a really interesting time digging into this and getting everything out up to the point where I can get to the main board. Now there have been a couple of modifications to this thing. So first of all, it's got an 8086 Intel board inside. It has an 68030 accelerator board. It has a memory expansion that has been modified. So this is really interesting. And of course it's slightly dirty. It has this very intensive old computer smell. Oh yeah, and the original power supply that was in here has been replaced by a PC power supply that was converted to fit the original cabling. So a lot of stuff to take apart, a lot of stuff to try and recover, and let's get into this. I've already tried it. It doesn't start up. No idea why, but I think it might be easier to find out why it's not working once I have it on the table and just the motherboard, and where I can take a really close look at all the components and find out what's wrong with it. So yeah, let's dig into it. Let's get stuff out. I'm going to start with the SCSI drive for the x86 board, x88 board. So let's say Quantum Pro Drive LPS. I would be surprised if that thing's still working, because they had an immense failure rate back then. But here's hoping. So most of this hardware is, well, at least when it was new, it was very expensive. So this is for getting this as a gift and saving it from the dumpster. This is a lot of value. And of course everything is full of modifications, so better not touch anything without making sure I know where it's going to go when it has to go back. So it looks like there's also a separate graphics card down there. Could that be a Picasso card? Wow, that would be super interesting. There's a flicker remover board down here. I think we can just pull this. Yeah. A deinterlacer. Yeah, Marco system deinterlace. Let's get some anti-static foil back here. This is super fun. Let's see if we can get everything off the Zorro bus first. Oh. Now I remember how hard it was to take these cards out. I don't want to break anything. Here we go. So what have we got here? So this here is a PC emulator A2000 with a memory expansion and some sort of overclocking, maybe? Super interesting. And this here is a NEC V20, so this thing's got a coprocessor. Next card is another card that is equally hard to get out. Here we have that's a GVP graphics card with a Cirrus Logic chip on it. Great value products. Super interesting. And let's hear it. here's a memory card of some sort. What the hell? Seems to be a SCSI card. A SCSI card with memory. Huh. And here we go. This here is the Accelerator Card. And this is going to be a bear to remove. I don't even know. Wrong screwdriver. So back in the days, I didn't have an Atari. I had an... back in the days, I didn't have an Amiga. I had an Atari ST. And although for things like back then, making PCBs and stuff, there were better tools for the ST. I was always kind of jealous for all the others that had the Commodores, because their games looked so much better than mine. Here we go. And as you might imagine, there is some corrosion surrounding the location of the battery. But it's not that bad. There's an advantage of having this in a tower. If the battery starts leaking, a lot less of those acids from the battery make it to the board. And they don't pool up as much. They flow down, but that makes them thin out a lot more. And with a bit of luck, most of this... Ooh, this doesn't look that good. I might be wrong, but it doesn't look quite as bad as I've already seen others. Now here we are. So what's this? Part of the power supply? That is just a Molex extension. Oh, and that is one hell of a Molex extension. That must be 1.20 meters or something. Now this is where it gets complicated, I suppose, because I don't know how I'm supposed to get to the screws holding the lower part of the drives, or at least this one drive, because if you take a look in here, sorry, the frame in here is still present. And here you can see the standard power supply that he used. Oh, there's... Oh, he actually put that into the cradle of the original power supply. Interesting. Let's see what we can remove here. Get you focused. So let's remove the rest of the cable. There's a floppy cable. Let's just pull this over here. There are several extension cables for the joysticks and the keyboard. And the keyboard is going to be a problem for me because I didn't get a keyboard with this and I don't have a keyboard, so I have to find a way to get one, or I have to find out if it's possible to build a PS2 to Amiga keyboard adapter easily. Same goes for the mouse. Screws in here with 5 different makes of screws. Okay. So here is a very small cable. Oh, that goes over to the board, and that is a power. No, that's a temperature sensor. What are you doing here? There's a temp sensor. Ouch. And I suppose that is for the fan. Okay. Let's remove the power from the board. Let's remove the power from the hard drives. There's some sort of... is even more power connector? What the hell? Here we have power. So this here goes back to the board, coming from the switch through the internal switch. Very interesting. Not exactly up to specs regarding safety. I suppose back then it would have probably been fair enough. Okay. Oh, this power supply is actually free floating. As you can see, that was way before the existence of 3D printers, where we could make all the parts that we need when we need them. Let's see if we can get this hard drive out. And we can't. What the? How? how did he manage to attach this? I wonder. So there's a hard drive in here. It's hard to show, and apparently it is mounted from the bottom, but the bottom is part of the original drives bracket and the bracket for the power supply. So how was anybody able to attach screws to that? We'll find out. Actually admiring the level of detail that he's gone through, making all of this stuff fit. So I think the power supply was in here when it was still in the old case, and he adapted all the cables to the original power supply bracket, which is a lot more work than just cutting the wires and attaching them to the wires, but it sure as hell makes it look kind of good. But that would have been quite the soldering job. Okay, we're making some headway, but not a lot. How was it possible to get this inside? This is really interesting. Okay, so there's a bracket back here. There are some brackets over here. And looking at it from the back, you can actually see that it has the original Amiga backplate. Maybe I can just unscrew this and pull everything out. Because I don't see any other ways of getting the power supply out. It's wedged in there. So is this hard drive. There's just no way to get to it. looking at the board, it's very nice. I really like the board design from back then. There was a lot of discrete components. You had to for this bus system, and the Zorro bus was actually one of the better buses back then. It was really complicated because you had to do a lot of buffering, and the whole bus arbitration was really complex because it was basically a bus that could auto-configure, so it didn't actually matter where you put your cards, and the operating system could basically figure out which cards were present and where they were located, and that was quite impressive at the time. And it also made it very important to get all of the bus terminations right. So now we have this out of here. This is still not moving. This is not moving the slightest. Oh, here's a very corroded screw. When taking old computers apart, most of the time I'm happy if I don't find any real bad corrosion, but with this system I'm not so sure. Oh, we have some professional insulation. And all of a sudden it slides out. Here we go. So we're getting here somewhere. Now this here is very puzzling to me. Because I don't know in which order this was put together, but it is quite literally impossible to open these screws with the hard drive still inside, and the hard drive is attached through via screws that are held in from down there. So what? Let's try to pull the board out. This is turning into an expedition. Oh, come on. So more information from the board is it's a revision 6.2, which is fine. I think that was past most of the bodges and other reworks that the boards had. Oh. And what I can see right now, well, there's a number of bodges on here and reworks, but I guess apart from the area around the battery, everything looks kind of cleanish. There's a big area of corrosion right under the battery, where a lot of what the hell? Where a lot of goo and gunk from the battery would have dripped down. Luckily, these capacitors, although they are computer capacitors, are way before the era of all capacitors failing. And looking at them right now, I don't see any major lakes of capacitor goo under them. One thing that is certain is that this is a pretty big collection of sharp edges and angles. So I've already cut myself twice on this thing, and I think there's more to come. Now here we can see more of the professional heat shielding, and yeah, everybody knows cardboard is also a high frequency isolator. But in that tower case, that would have been no issue for any high frequency to get out back then. And today it's not so much of a problem because we don't have FM radios anymore. Whoops. That was the head. Ouch. So. We are getting making progress here. Slowly. It's not a lot to see, it's just screws. I wonder if I can make a nice case with the laser or the 3D printer and make like a wooden version of the Amiga case. That would probably be a really cool idea. Okay, so the main board is no longer attached to the case. Let's see if we can try and wiggle this out, or at least try and get all the screws pulled up. Yeah, those screws don't want to come up out of the board. What the hell? And I am kind of reluctant to give this just a big tug, because this might be attached to something. Okay. Let's just try and move backwards from here. That's a no and a no. Really needs to be said, this thing, when this thing was built, it was a major build. Well, I can see what the issue is here. So there are some spacers between here, and these spacers are just screws. Okay. There's got to be an easier way than this. Because I'm really afraid of breaking something. I don't want to break this board or anything on it or around it. But the way that everything is hooked up here, I'm kind of afraid to. I'm afraid to just give this a big tug and rip everything apart. There's another screw that is used as a spacer. All two nuts against each other with a number of spacers between them. Spacers. Yes. Two more screws gone. I think it's moving. I think it's moving. I think it's still stuck. But I think it's just stuck on the keyboard and joystick connectors. How did this ever get to be inside there? You know what? There's a plastic spacer here, and I think we can do without that. Okay, so three things happened right at the same time. First thing was the board inside came loose and moved up. The camera ran out of battery and shut off. And I managed to cut myself in the finger, then started bleeding. Okay, now blood is removed and we've got the main board here. And as you can see, we do have some corrosion around the battery, but it could be a lot worse. I've seen worse, I've had worse. This is something that I'm pretty happy to put up with. That can just be cleaned off. with something slightly acidic like vinegar or other chemicals, and that shouldn't be a problem. The rest that I can see, as far as I was able to take it out, there's really nothing majorly wrong with this. So apparently we've got a board from week 5289. It's fine. It's kind of clean. And like I said, it's a tower, so most of the dust doesn't settle on it, but it just falls off. Same is true for the battery acid. It can run down and it doesn't pool on it. And yeah, we'll get to the damage later. The back of it, I took great care not to damage anything. I didn't scratch anything in the back. And I really like the looks. And I've had this before with these old boards. They didn't think a lot of removing the flux when they were working on it. Apart from that, all of the connectors up front and under the ICs appear to be flux free, and that would mean nobody's ever worked on this board. And that's a good thing too. So let's have a look at the tower case. Now, this must have been quite a lot of work back then, because basically the tower is opened up, so the original backplate fits in here. And it is actually made in a way so the board would actually slide inside, and then it was screwed down with distancers, spacers, and screws. And for parts where there wasn't any metal to screw it in, because there was a hole for the ATX type board, he just used simple metal pieces. So a lot of work in preparation, and I think the thing itself was really well done. What you can see, let's turn this over, it's probably gonna go to pieces in any second, is we do have a lot of battery acid down here in that corner, and I'd rather have it down there than on the board, which is a good thing. So the damage from a broken battery in a tower case is most of the time not as bad as the same damage on a desktop case. And the rest of the work that was done there was, well, not so complicated. I did wonder why he left the internal bracket inside the case as he built it. I suppose it was because the power supply rests here, and he didn't want to move the power supply upwards because the cable would have been too short. But that's just speculation on my part. So this was a pretty nice job. And as I said, I think it worked in this configuration for quite some time regarding the amount of dust and dirt that I found in there. The joystick was connected through ribbon cables to the back, so was the keyboard. And the front power switch was simply chained to the internal power switch, so you could turn it on either at the front when the back was turned on, or you could turn it on the back when the front was turned on. So, fair enough. Now let's move this over to the side and have a look at the board and maybe get to working on that corrosion bit.